ratifier la Convention de Genève.
Économie.
Riforma giudiziaria.
Sveiki, čia Europos naujienos. Tik pas mus ES aktualijos glaustai ir originalo kalba. Tad kai kurie reportažai su lietuviškais titrais. Visa tai jūsų patogumui. Na, o šiandien laidoje reikalai Lenkijoje, kultūriniai skirtumai Europoje ir interviu su Federica Mogherini, kuri be kita ko įstikinusi, jog tik Sirijos diplomatija gali nugalėti ISIS. Visa tai ir dar daugiau visai netrukus, taigi metas pradėti. Ir pirmiausiai šios savaitės dienotvarkė trumpai.
Es geht den Eindruck, dass eine Regierungsmehrheit zu einem Diktat greift.
It is clear that they have no intention of undermining pluralism and the rule of law.
Una Corte Costituzionale indipendente e dei mezzi di informazione liberi sono i presupposti di uno Stato di diritto.
Jeżeli chodzi o zmiany w mediach publicznych, to zmiany zostały wprowadzone przez większość parlamentarną, w niczym nie naruszają europejskich standardów dotyczących publicznych nadawców.
Aujourd'hui, on réintroduit allègrement des contrôles aux frontières. Demain, on s'apercevra que le coût économique est considérable.
Nous avons honte de voir nombre d'États membres remettre en question des acquis importants comme celui de Schengen.
Es muss klargestellt werden, dass derjenige, der Recht bricht und der die Tradition entspricht, die Gleichberechtigung von Mann und Frau, die Kultur in Europa nicht respektiert, dass der dann auch sein Gastrecht verwirkt und abgeschoben werden muss.
You're gonna have an exceptional summit on the 18th, I think, of February on Brexit. Well, I propose a change. Do an exceptional summit on the refugee crisis. The kind of Brexit can wait until March of April.
The Union is stronger with Britain inside, and Britain is stronger inside the Union. That's why we do think that the deal we are seeking has to be a fair deal for the European Union too.
The opportunity for change should be grasped enthusiastically.
Nederland zal dit jaar geen Europees kampioen zijn voor voetbal. Dat weten we wel. Maar Nederland is wel een Europees kampioen op een ander vlak dat u niet vermeld hebt en dat is belastingontwijking.
Tous les contribuables honnêtes, PME et particuliers doivent payer plus d'impôts, compenser ce pillage organisé par le Luxembourg et d'autres paradis fiscaux. Et cette triste Union européenne ne fait rien pour arrêter cela.
Christians in Iraq and Syria on a daily basis are abducted, raped, tortured and forced to flee.
На тези, които го организират, като Саудитска Арабия, трябва да се налагат търговски санкции.
It's still not working information sharing, especially when it comes to information on suspects, on risks, and that's what we need to strengthen, not gathering loads of data on individuals who are not relevant at all.
Sie haben es geschafft, ein Abkommen zustande zu bringen, wo teilweise Länder gemeinsam sich verpflichtet haben, die gegeneinander Krieg führen.
If the Paris Agreement made one thing clear to our economy, is that low carbon will be more competitive than high carbon, and that is a very, very crucial notion.
Quand on regarde les derniers chiffres sur les investissements sur les énergies renouvelables, on voit que toutes les régions du monde progressent en matière d'investissement sur les énergies renouvelables, sauf l'Europe.
Tęsiame laidą. Lenkija raginama laikytis teisinės valstybės ir spaudos laisvės principų. Emocinga diskusija su ministre pirmininke Beata Šidlo, Europos parlamento nariams susirūpinus demokratijos padėtimi Lenkijoje.
La Polonia è un grande paese. Noi non l'abbandoneremo. Lei non la porti su una via che non è consona alla sua storia e alla sua tradizione.
No se trata de la ley, se trata de los valores. Usted, como cualquier gobierno legítimo, puede cambiar la ley, pero ni usted ni ningún gobierno legítimo puede cambiar los valores.
I nie doszło, szanowni państwo, w ostatnim czasie do żadnego złamania konstytucji w Polsce.
Having spoken to Polish MEPs, ministers and the Prime Minister earlier today, it is clear that they have no intention
of undermining pluralism and the rule of law.
Mutual trust among EU member states and their respective legal systems depends on the confidence that the rule of law is observed in all member states.
O dabar interviu su ne tik Lietuvoje gana kritiškai vertinama ES komisare iš Italijos Federica Mogherini. ES užsienio politikos vadovė optimistiškai tikisi naujos eros Irano ir vakarų santykiuose.
Iran has been welcomed into the international fold as Russia remains out of favour. Busy times for Europe and his Foreign Affairs Chief, Federica Mogherini. She sat down with Europos TV and our first question: what could be on the way after France invoked an EU treaty solidarity clause following attacks in Paris?
Somehow we are in a new territory because it's the first time we use an article of the treaty. And I believe this has a very important significance politically, because it means that also in the field of defense we can use the articles of the treaties that are there.
To develop the common security and defense policy?
To develop even more, because we do have 17 EU missions and operations around the world already. So we do have a capacity out there already, but there are articles of the treaties that we can use even more, and this is an example for that.
But what about a combined military response by the member states of Europe?
I do not see a future EU military intervention in Syria or in Iraq. I said this several times. The European Union is having a role, a crucial one, on Syria and the fight against Daesh on two tracks. One is the humanitarian assistance we give inside Syria and around Syria. And second is the support and the facilitation we are providing for the political talks to try to solve the crisis in Syria.
There is talks that will happen in Geneva on January 25th involving all the key players from Russia to the EU to Iran. What is expected from these talks?
What we've done immediately after having reached an agreement with Iran on their nuclear program after the summer, we have pushed for forming an international support group for Syria with all the relevant actors in the region and the international scenes. The talks among the Syrians that are supposed to start within a few days in Geneva are going to be the starting point of, on one side, a political transition. So yes, a transition means that you start in one place and you end up in another one, in Damascus. In parallel, a ceasefire among all those that are fighting the internal civil war in Syria that could allow us to unite forces to effectively fight against Daesh and defeat Daesh.
But Bashar al-Assad specifically, can you see him continuing?
The international community does not have a common stance. You know that very well. Iran and Russia have one position. The European Union, our American friends, others in the region do not have the same position. The important point is that rather than simply stating, as we have done for 4 or 5 years now, that Bashar al-Assad has to leave and he's still there, we start a process that allows the transition to begin. The only way of defeating Daesh, not only fighting but defeating Daesh, is to stop the civil war and unite forces against the major threat.
Now, changing gears and coming to a former, you could say, international pariah, Iran, how do you see relations with Iran developing, and how good is it for Europe?
For Europe, it's going to be very good. From an economic point of view, that's quite obvious. Europe has always been the strongest actor in an economic or commercial scene in Iran before the sanctions were introduced, and you see this very clearly already. It's mainly for the European businesses to go back to invest and cooperate with Iranian businesses. But I see a lot of possible fields of cooperation between the European Union and Iran in the field of research and science and technology or culture. We have plenty of fields where cooperation is possible, none of them excluded. The real success will come when this agreement will manage to open the way for different kinds of relations, more cooperative relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Gulf and in the region. This is the real investment.
Can you see a problem occurring in the future where the West has to choose between Sunni versus Shia?
Tensions are there today, and this is self-evident. In this moment, these are very serious, and there is a serious risk that the bilateral tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran could develop in something bigger for the region and for the rest of the world. But on the other side, look back 1 year, 2 years ago.
To the relations with Iran itself.
Relations with Iran were a completely different moment. An agreement was far from reality. We were working on that, but we were very far away. The sanctions were in place. And what happened just a few days ago with the release of prisoners of US citizenship in Iran and Iranian citizenship in the US was inconceivable just 1 year ago. So things can change and can change in a positive way.
And then just lastly, what next for Russia?
Sanctions on Russia have just been rolled over in December. The European Union is and stays united on this, on the fact that this is linked to the full implementation of the Minsk agreements. There is no change in policy there. I hope in the future to improve relations with Russia on other issues. We work in a constructive way with Russia. Think of the Iranian deal I just mentioned, we did it together. Think of the situation in the Middle East, we worked together. Think of the situation in Libya. All the work we do in the UN Security Council, we do it together. On the Ukrainian issue, on the annexation of Crimea, our policy stays the same, but our wish is that our relations with Russia could improve and that the Minsk agreement could be fully implemented.
Gladio, Ms. Mogherini, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us on Europol TV.
Kultūrinių skirtumų gerbimas Europoje, nesaugumo ir terorizmo grėsmės augimo laikais Europos parlamento nariai pabrėžia būtinybę labiau negu bet kada skatinti tarpkultūrinį dialogą.
Last year's terror attacks and the migration surge have given the drive towards multiculturalism in Europe new impetus. This week, MEPs threw their weight behind an initiative from the Culture Committee to reinvigorate the process.
Intercultural dialogue is about talking to each other. It is about encountering each other, learning about each other, celebrating difference, finding commonality.
Mass migrations have taken place in Europe for centuries. They've led to diverse, multi-religious societies. The danger now, warns one MEP, is for EU member states to close in on themselves in the face of imagined threats.
We all have become more or less, at least, migration societies, and that means we have to deal with our own cultural traditions, but with all the cultures of the migrant societies and communities as well. We should not go back to nationalism and to this concept of sovereignty.
In their resolution, MEPs urge member states to make the most of a raft of educational, creative, research and neighbourhood programmes in the EU to advance intercultural dialogue.
Toliau laidoje bendroji skaitmeninė rinka ir geografinio blokavimo pabaiga. Europos parlamento nariai prašo komisijos skatinti skaitmeninę ekonomiką ir nutraukti geografinį blokavimą, trukdantį vartotojams įsigyti prekes ir paslaugas internete.
Transforming the economy by generating €415 billion and creating thousands of jobs. That's what a fully functioning digital single market could do for Europe. MEPs gave it their support at a vote in Strasbourg on Tuesday.
The economy is becoming more and more digital. We can see how those digital barriers dividing our member states are coming back. We have to create digital single market in the European Union.
First things first, getting rid of barriers across the 28 member states to make sure that consumers have greater access to goods and services online.
If there are 28 sets of, for example, consumer protection rules, then companies just don't sell cross borders. But there's a big difference when you sell to a market of 1 million or 5 million or to a market of 500 million.
Another focal point of the discussion in the chamber was geo-blocking, the practice that prevents the user accessing information based on their country-wide location. The Parliament calls for an end to unjustified geo-blocking.
This goes against the very foundation of a single market, so I don't think there can be justified geo-blocking inside the digital single market.
But what MEPs say is required is to put the consumer first and for innovation to be allowed to flourish. So far, the digital single market is merely a concept, but expect the Commission to put flesh on the bones of their proposal later on in the year.
O dabar pasižiūrėkime, kaip atrodo skaitmeninė Europa. Skaitmeninė darbotvarkė turi pašalinti kliūtis ES pirmavimui skaitmeninėje srityje, skirtingas šalių galimybės, elektroninius nusikaltimus, įgūdžių stygių ir taip toliau.
The European Single Digital Agenda, the new driver for Europe's economy, powering up technology to empower people and business. We use billions of devices to stay connected. In the next decade, it could reach 1 trillion. But how is the digital agenda set to take Europe to infinity and beyond? It's the centerpiece of the EU 2020 strategy, promising a new dawn of fast broadband, better online security, and better support of online innovation. But with 28 member states needing to get on an equal footing, much needs to be done. Ever found yourself suddenly without signal? The infrastructure just isn't in place across the EU. Also, we may shop online, but how many of us actually buy goods outside of our home countries? So to sum it up, 110 million Europeans have never used the internet. 246 million people, nearly 50% of the population, either have no or low digital skills. And by 2020, 900,000 jobs in the IT sector could remain unfilled because people don't have the right skills. The digital agenda is expected to increase EU GDP by 5% by scrapping roaming charges, and same too for charges for digital goods and services. It will encourage more startups. Right now, we have very few hubs in the EU. How about if we had more online journalism portals, just like... Better infrastructure, but is the funding allocation enough? Spain alone spent 150 billion euros on new fibre optic cables. That same amount has been earmarked for Europe-wide infrastructure. Beefed up cybersecurity, keeping away cyber criminals and snoops. But everyone has to get involved. It's all about evolution.
Ir šios laidos pabaigai ilgas kelias į taiką Kolumbijoje. Europos parlamento nariai ragina 2016 metais įgyvendinti taikos susitarimą priimtą prieš 4 metus ir baigti dešimtmečius trunkantį konfliktą.
2016 is a crucial year in efforts to end a civil war in Colombia that has claimed more than 200,000 lives. The government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, aim to wrap up a peace accord launched 4 years ago. This week, MEPs debating next steps sought to advance the process.
Hemos conseguido un hito, y es que 7 grupos políticos, que normalmente somos distantes en las posiciones ideológicas y en los conceptos, ponernos de acuerdo, han emprendido en estos momentos de manos del presidente Santos un proceso que otros iniciaron, que no concluyeron y que por fin parece que las partes que han estado 50 años en guerra pueden llegar a una conclusión de paz.
As signatory to a free trade agreement with Colombia and Peru, the EU has plenty at stake and, says one MEP, plenty of responsibility too to ensure commercial activities support future peace and human rights.
Las multinacionales, que muchas veces son europeas, son también un agravante, por decirlo de alguna manera, en el conflicto, por todos esos conflictos con respecto a las tierras, y ahí creemos que también la Unión Europea tendría que actuar.
MEPs want an agreement by March this year. Remaining issues include demobilization of combatants and justice and reparations for victims. Deals on land redistribution and combating the drugs trade have already been reached.
Tiek šiandien, ačiū už drauge praleistą laiką. Europos naujienos, laida, kurią rengiame drauge su Europos TV, jūsų lauks ir kitą savaitę, tad iki naujų susitikimų.
Ratifier la Convention de Genève. Économie. Riforma giudiziaria. Tax Day. Travail à l'immigration. Après la Programul European de Monitorizare.